He's spent 20 odd years conducting this plan, and it just seems like a weak plan. Even though it kind of ticked the boxes, it didn't really go any further than that for me.
Archipelago.
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 Archipelago. It's an archipelago. Hello everyone, and welcome to my March reading wrap up, where I share with you all of the books that I read last month in March and what my thoughts on them were. I read a total of 5 books in March, which was definitely an improvement on my 3 books in February. And I had quite a mixed reading month for sure. I read quite a few different genres, which normally I tend to gravitate towards 1 or 2 genres in a month, but I read quite a variety of genres and styles and things that were a little bit more outside of my comfort zone as well. So it was quite an interesting reading month, but yeah, it was quite mixed as well. So without further ado, let's go straight into the first book that I read in March, which was When We Were Orphans by Kazuo Ishiguro. If you've watched any of my other videos, you will have seen this author appear many times because he has become my favourite author, I think, my absolute favourite author. His books are just incredible. His writing is just so beautiful and melancholy and descriptive and mysterious. He just writes mystery into his stories so well and uniquely. When We Were Orphans is probably the one that I was least interested in reading of them all, and that's partly because I've just not heard great things about this one. I think when people rate his books, this one usually appears somewhere near the bottom. And even Ishiguro himself is quoted saying that this is not his best book. And so you kind of already from the start are going into this book feeling like it's probably not going to be that incredible. The story itself follows Christopher Banks in the 1930s, so sort of interwar period in Britain. And Christopher Banks is a famous, renowned detective. Everyone in London knows who he is. He's kind of recently reached fame status and everyone knows about his cases, and he's just sort of known for being a really high-ranking person in London society. However, for Christopher Banks, there is one crime that he has never been able to solve, and it's the crime that has plagued him his whole life. And that is the disappearance of his parents. As a child, he grew up in Shanghai, and he had to sort of be rushed to London after his parents both went missing as a child. And so part of this story is about him kind of trying to work that out now that he is older, now that he has some fame as a detective and he has the connections and the knowledge and the understanding. And so he goes back to Shanghai and starts to find out what went on. This was not my favourite Ishiguro book. That doesn't mean it was bad. It was a good book, but there was just, I think what it is every book that I've read by Ishiguro, I have been thinking about it for ages afterwards. Like, it doesn't matter what other books I read afterwards, I'm still thinking about this one. And even months or years after reading some of his books, I still remember what happened, and it's still like, I still think about it. Whereas this is the first one where even now, a month later, I'm sitting down trying to remember what happened and how I felt about it. And I don't really remember it that well. That doesn't mean that this book was bad. This book was really good at keeping me gripped. I really wanted to know what happened to this guy's parents. And that kind of central mystery to the book really kept me going. It did have a very twisty, unexpected ending, which I think Ishiguro does really well, is he throws an ending at you that, like, I never expect the ending that comes in his books. They always surprise me, and that was the same with this one. It's twisty and twisted, and the ending is very surprising. There's sort of this central theme running through it as well of working out what it is that we want, what the characters actually want from life. And there's a quote from one of the characters in it who Christopher Banks kind of forms a bit of a friendship, slight relationship with at one point in the story. She's talking about how it's too late for her, and she says this: too late for, oh, I don't know. All I know is that I've wasted all these years looking for something, a sort of trophy I'd get only if I really, really did enough to deserve it. But I don't want it anymore. I want something else now, something warm and sheltering, something I can turn to regardless of what I do, regardless of who I become, something that will just be there always, like tomorrow's sky. That's what I want now, and I think it's what you should want too. And I just loved that quote, and I think that really does underpin the kind of theme of this story. There's themes of adoption, themes of kind of trying to earn people's affection and earn people's love, and this desperation that if I achieve my goals and I finally achieve this big mystery in my life, then things are going to be okay. And I really, really loved that central theme to the story. And that's kind of what makes this book special, more than the detective part of it. So yeah, I really enjoyed this one. It wasn't my favourite one. It isn't super, super memorable or impactful as the other ones for me personally, but it was still a great book, and I'm glad that I read it still. The second book that I read this month was The Bridge Kingdom by Danielle L. Jensen. And this is a fantasy romance. It's a romance book with some fantasy thrown in, honestly. I was really excited to read this one because I was just so in the mood for something a little bit cheesy and romantic, but in a kind of magical world. And that is what I got with this book. It was cheesy, it was predictable, it was romantic-ish for me, and it was in a magical world. But even though it kind of ticked the boxes, it didn't really go any further than that for me. The story follows Princess Lara, and she is the daughter of the king of her land. And along with all of her sisters, she has loads of sisters, and all of them live in this compound in the middle of the desert. And they've grown up throughout their whole life in this isolation, and basically they are training to become a warrior spy. And the idea is that at some point one of them will be chosen to become the bride that they will offer to the king of the neighbouring land. This neighbouring land is called the Bridge Kingdom, and that is because there is this bridge that connects several different trade routes, and this is the country that kind of has the bridge in it. They have ownership of the bridge, and as a result they have access to all of the trade routes and resources and things that the other countries don't have access to. And as a result, all of the other countries are quite poor and deprived, whereas the Bridge Kingdom seems to be flourishing and rich, and its people have everything that they need. So we come to the day that the princesses are having their kind of final test to see which one of them is going to be offered up as the bride. And through some deception, Princess Lara is the one who wins, which kind of surprises the king and surprises all of the other people there as well, because they were all rooting for and expecting one of the other sisters to win. Princess Lara is taken to the Bridge Kingdom to her future husband. She's married off there and then, and she is kind of supposed to infiltrate this country and get to know its kind of weaknesses and report them back to her father, the king, through some kind of like code that they've developed. I don't think it's trying to be a super logical, believable book, but I just the whole time couldn't get over the idea that why would the king think that, oh, I'll send my daughter to this young, attractive, neighbouring king, and once she is trapped in their kingdom and only has him to talk to and only has his people to talk to, she's probably, you know, definitely still gonna want to be on my side. He hasn't just like come up with this idea. He has trained these daughters up for like 18, no, they're older than 18. I think she's in her 20s. He has spent 20 odd years conducting this plan. And it just seems like a weak plan for 20 years of work. I don't know. The whole time, I just couldn't get over that, and it really affected my enjoyment of the story. The romance is nice. I would say it is a bit more on the mature side. I would definitely say this is an adult romance rather than a young adult romance. So just bear that in mind if you are going into it. Yeah, I would say if you're up for just pure escapism, you don't really want to think about it too much, this is a good, enjoyable story. So yeah, mixed feelings on that one. I don't think that I'll read the sequel. I'm not hooked into the story enough. I'm not invested enough in the characters by the end of book one. The next book that I picked up was The Paris Apartment by Lucy Foley. This book really surprised me, and I enjoyed this one a lot more than I thought I was going to. The story follows our main character Jess, and Jess is not having a great time in life. Some stuff has happened in her personal life that is making her a little bit afraid to stay where she is. And so she decides that she's going to go out to Paris, where her brother is living, and just spend a little bit of time with him and kind of start her life again. So she agrees to meet her brother at his apartment in Paris, and off she goes. She books a flight, gets to Paris, rings her brother to come and pick her up, but he doesn't answer. She's quite frustrated, but she's like, okay, well, I've got nowhere to go, so I'm gonna have to just try and find his apartment. She follows the address and gets there, rings him again, no answer. She's pressing the buzzer, no answer, no one will let her in. Eventually, she finds a way to get in when, I don't actually remember how she got in. She gets in somehow, and she finds that her brother is not at his apartment. And it's all looking a little bit weird in there. There's some kind of dark stains that she's not sure if they're blood or something else. The people in the apartment are a little bit creepy, the people in the other apartments, and yeah, it's all just a little bit weird. And so she decides that she has obviously got to find out what's going on. Days go by, weeks go by, her brother does not turn up. At this point, she knows something's happened to him, something sinister has happened to him at this apartment. And so she kind of infiltrates it and makes connections with all the people there in an attempt to work out where her brother is and what has happened. I feel like this book could have been set anywhere. Like, it didn't need to be set in Paris, because the whole story takes place inside this building rather than in, like, we don't get to see Paris or explore Paris. So that was like a little bit of a disappointment, because part of the interest in the book for me was that it was going to be exploring Paris, like a mystery in Paris, but it wasn't that. However, the building setting was really, really good. I really love thrillers that are set like in an enclosed building, like a creepy old building. So I really enjoyed the setting, even though it wasn't what I was kind of hoping for out of the book. This is one of those mystery books as well where it doesn't really give you a massive plot twist. It's not like jump scares or crazy twists. It sort of just unravels a little bit like that feeling when you realise something really obvious and you have that like everything's dawning on you feeling. That's the feeling that you get whilst reading this book. It sort of gradually unravels to the point where you're like, this is a really obvious conclusion as to what has happened. So yeah, I've really enjoyed this one, and I think if you're someone that doesn't read lots of thrillers and you like something that's a little bit creepy but not fully scary, then I think this is a really good one to pick up. I then read A Wizard of Earthsea, which is the first book in the Earthsea series by Ursula Guin. I actually did a whole reading vlog on reading the story, so if you want my in-depth thoughts, definitely check out that video. That has all of my in-depth feelings about the story. But in short, this story follows our main character, who at the beginning of the story is called Junie. He lives in an island called Gaunt. And Gaunt is kind of famous for pirates, goats, and farming, I think. It's not a very like brave or courageous or influential island in this world. The whole world is actually made up of lots of little islands. It's an archipelago. Archipelago. I don't know how you say that word.
Archipelago.
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 Archipelago. It's an archipelago. So one day, Junie discovers that he actually has some magical abilities. The island of Guin is attacked by these warriors, and because Guin is not a particularly courageous or strong warrior island, they don't actually have many men on the island. They're kind of outnumbered, and they're pretty sure that they're going to fail and lose and die. However, Junie is able to do something through his abilities that saves the whole island, and news of this action spreads out across the archipelago. The news spreads across the world. We're just going to say the world. It ends up coming to the ears of a wizard, and this wizard makes the trek over to Guin to meet with Junie and kind of tells him, you know, you have these magical abilities and you could become my apprentice. It kind of just follows his whole life. It's like a whole look at from his very young childhood to becoming an adult. What it's trying to do is tell you the legend of this wizard's life. It's supposed to be telling you like this tale that has been passed down through generations, and so of course it's going to come across a little bit information dumpy, and it's going to come across a little bit fast-paced, and like chunks of information are missing that we would have really valued from. But even though I know that that was kind of the feel it was trying to give off, it did definitely impact the enjoyment of the story for me. But I definitely do want to carry on with the series. I know that the other books follow different main characters as well, so I definitely want to carry on with the series. But I had, mixed feelings. Loved the world, loved the writing style, loved the creativity of it, but just didn't enjoy the process of reading it as much. And then the final book that I read in March was You and Me on Vacation by Emily Henry. I really wanted to read Emily Henry's new book that's coming out this year called Book Lovers. So that's kind of what made me pick this up, because I kind of wanted to try one of her other ones to see if I like her writing style and her storytelling before I pick up the new one. I did really enjoy her writing style. She writes dialogue in such a clever and sarcastic way that feels very realistic but also fun and engaging. She just writes relationships, like friendships, employee and boss relationships, and also romantic ones, really well and very authentically. I felt like I was reading something very authentic and real and not fake and unbelievable, which was really nice because I really struggle with romance books that just feel really unbelievable and just would never happen. The story follows Poppy and Alex, and they are best friends who met in college, And early on in their friendship, they decide that they are going to go on a trip together every year. And at the start of the story, they are very much friends. There isn't really a romantic spark between them. They're very different people, but they just sort of get each other and understand each other and are really good for each other. And so that sort of bonds them together. And we know in the story that in like 2 summers ago to the present time, something happened on their vacation that has caused them to lose touch and lose connection. They don't speak to each other anymore, and they don't go on a holiday together. But Poppy is realizing that her life is just not good without him in it, and she is desperate for them to reconnect. And so she kind of rekindles their friendship, and they agree to go on one final trip together. The story backs and forths a lot between like 12 summers ago, this summer, 11 summers ago, this summer. There's a lot of back and forth, and the whole time it's hinting towards this thing that happened 2 summers ago. And I didn't massively enjoy the back and forthness of the plot. I found like I was enjoying one storyline, and then that was it. It had ended, and we're never going to go back to that part of their life. And then we'd be back to present day, and then it'd be another summer, and it just felt like lots of little stories going on. It felt a little bit repetitive as well at times, like similar things were happening each summer. And yeah, I found it a little bit repetitive. I feel like this is the theme of every book, almost every book I read this month. It was good, I liked it, but I didn't love it. So yeah, I felt that way about this as well. It was easy to read. I did, however, get about halfway through, and then I had to put it down for like 2 weeks before I could pick it back up, because I don't know, I was enjoying it when I was reading it, but the thought of picking it up to read it wasn't filling me with joy. So that was everything that I read in the month of March. I hope you enjoyed hearing my thoughts. I'd love to know what you read in March. Did you read any new favourites? I'm kind of sad that I didn't read any new like 5-star reads, so I'd love to know if you did discover any new favourites this month. And also, if you've read any of the books that I mentioned in this video, let me know your thoughts. I'd love to chat to you about them in the comments, so please leave a comment down below. I hope that you have a wonderful day or evening, whatever time it is that you're watching this video, and I'll see you very soon in the next video.